So let's get into what you want to hear. We won a game. Yes. 22 without a win, I think was the top flight record, but that wait is over. Glenn, you called it. Let's be fair. I mean, it was an ugly 1-0, but
yes,
what the doctor ordered.
Yeah, very much so. I mean, there were things that weren't great about the performance, and I'm sure we're going to get into those. But the bottom line is that, you know, we've been crying out for a game where we got over the line, and it doesn't matter how you do it at the end of the day. You know, if you get 3 points at the end of any Premier League game, then it's, you know, that's the first and foremost thing that you celebrate, and then you worry about the other stuff later. As a game, I thought the first 40 minutes was probably as poor a game of football as I can remember for quite a while. Mainly brought on by Everton's tactics of going down for nothing all over the park, and that just meant the game sort of didn't flow at all. Their players all sort of went down until the physio was just about to come back on, and then they sprung back to their feet again. So it was a bizarre sort of tactic they've obviously got going to try and delay the game as much as possible. Yeah, so the main thing to talk about in the opening sort of 40 minutes was Tarkowski's challenge on Archer, which was horrific and really should have been a red card. Might get into that later. But there was a brief flurry at the end of the first half where we actually looked a little bit better, and we had sort of like 3 efforts on goal. Harwood-Bellis header, Archer dragged one across goal, and Ryan Manning nearly connected with one that fizzed across the goal. So we went into half time, you know, reasonable. Second half was much more even. They had chances, we had chances, and you know, Aaron Ramsdale really sort of like came to the fore, kept us in it with some brilliant saves, and that's kind of what we've been predicting all along, that there would be games that he would keep us in it and keep the score down, and you know, keep us in with a chance of winning points, and he certainly did that yesterday. Game from a quality point of view improved when we brought on Tyler Dibbling and Sugawara. And, you know, we had 2 sort of players who are better on the ball. You know, Ryan Manning and Jack Stevens kind of did their jobs, but we increased the sort of quality of the team when we brought those 2 on. You know, there's so many incidents to talk about in there. I mean, there's the I mean, the saves from Ramsdale from Michael Keane was a ridiculous save. I was sat right behind that, and how he managed to sort of shovel that round the post was quite something. And we had the Everton hit in the bar, and basically we went straight out the other end and scored. And that was you know, it'd be interesting if there's people talking about the style of play. They've talked about it in a negative fashion all season. But the fact is, we didn't just welly the ball out for a throw-in or whatever. With, you know, I think it was Aribo and Fernandez sort of built it up the left-hand side, eventually over to the right, and Sugawara's cross was put in by Armstrong. Yeah, we had the Bednarek near red card, which I think was just before the goal, which Sean Dyche amusingly was very annoyed about. What else was there? And of course the disallowed goal, the VAR check,
VAR ever,
which was horrific. I think that went on from 88 minutes on the clock till about 92.
It felt like 8 years, though, didn't it? Just like,
yeah. And in the meantime, the 4 minutes to go, board had gone up, and we were all sat there trying to work out. Okay, so there's 2 minutes of normal time plus this 4 minutes. When is this going to end? And you know, that was horrible, but we got away with it, and eventually it was much closer. When you see the pictures, it was a hell of a lot closer than it originally looked to the naked eye. So that's the little bit of good fortune that you need to win games in this league. You know, you need to be dogged and compete for 90 minutes or 95 minutes, whatever it is. You also need a little bit of fortune, and you need to have those enough moments of quality to and take your chances, and we just about put it all together, which is what we've been waiting for. But you know, it's no good thinking we've cracked it. We've got to go to Wolves next week and do a similar thing again.
and follow it up. Alfie, that first 40 minutes, as Glenn mentions, I mean, to a certain extent, it feels like that was to be expected. It was always going to be a little bit tight, wasn't it? A bit turgid at times. It kind of summed up our season, but it was worth the wait in the end.
Yeah, I mean, actually, I said it in my sort of post-match ramble video where my thoughts are really incoherent, a little bit like they are sometimes on here. But I wasn't actually that downbeat on the first 40 minutes as everybody in my comments, and obviously Glenn now, and I imagine Steve as well. Just because at the time I felt that I could see that the game was open, and I could see that Everton were there to be got at, and I felt that they could easily win. It wasn't, I know they had the better chances, and it took 41 minutes for Saints to have a shot, but that was only because of the quality of the final pass. For me, it was just he mentioned Glenn there. Adam Armstrong was in behind quite a few times. Matty Fernandez on the turn, constantly driving up the pitch. He was just always at the last cross or the last pass was, easily sort of swatted away. And then maybe I suppose a combination of me not having to pay for the privilege of being there and not realising that actually it was probably as turgid as it was, and also the last 5 minutes of that half, which put a bit of a gloss onto it because they had a couple of chances and they started to get into the game. Maybe think it wasn't that bad, but then, like I say, clearly the quality went up in the second half and the understanding's there. Glenn touched on it. The only other thing I wanted to talk about was Russell Martin's style that gets spoken about all the time, and that they've obviously given up goals this season playing out the back. But ultimately, they've won that game on Saturday because of this style and because they didn't just welly up the pitch. It's the cool header down from Matty Fernandez. It's 2-1-2s with Joe Rebo. It's a deft little through ball from Harwood-Bellis, but a lot of their chances came from that as well. Hairy moments at the back. I thought, Jack Stevens underplayed a couple passes. He looked a bit nervous, but they usually got away with it. They played out. And I feel that there's a level of understanding there. And I looked at the teams today, and for the last 4 games since Arsenal, which was decent, Bournemouth was probably the last time where it was really, really howling for 90 minutes or so. Obviously, including the last 30 minutes of Leicester in that. The last 4 games, they've had 7 players play every single game, start every minute. They had a couple that have dropped in and out, sort of replacements here and there. Jack Stevens come back from suspension, Adam Lallana for Aribo, Armstrong for Tyler Diblin, but mostly like-for-like changes. I think that Russell Martin now has a clear idea of what his best team is, how it looks on the pitch, and the system in which they play. And maybe it's a bit of a surprise that includes Ryan Manning. But the role he does is somewhat unique, and he offers a little bit going forward and back, not as much going forward. I think it's good that Russell Martin settled on a system. If they go to Wolves, largely unchanged, but for obviously Adam Lallana, who probably is going to be injured now, I think that they're onto a good thing.
We'll get onto the subs as well, because that's a really good point. I thought that was quite key yesterday. Steve, 25 seconds, I think it was, after they hit the crossbar, we went down the other end and scored. It was certainly fine margins.
Yeah, definitely. And again, it was another one of those sort of wide free kicks where we've let 2 or 3 attackers drift in around the back completely unchallenged. And I mean, let's be honest, we massively got away with that. Because, certainly earlier in the season, opposition would have been scoring that. But you kind of make your own luck at times, and we've had a lot of games where the fine margins have fallen against us, and yesterday for once they finally fell in our favour, and it was great counter attack. Actually, the key bit of that counter attack for me was Harwood-Bellis's pass inside, because I think Lindstrom had basically overcommitted and kind of tried to cut out. Tried to engage with Harwood-Bellis rather than keeping an eye on what was kind of overlapping behind him, and all of a sudden that gave Sugawara acres of space to kind of stroll into. Simple pass across, and Armstrong just about did it with the finish right down the middle. I think if Pickford didn't have a defender in the way, then I think he's probably got a solid chance of saving that. But he's got across Ashley Young, who, I mean, let's be honest, if that's your team, you look at that Everton team, they're generally fairly solid as a unit, but I think he's the guy that you would always earmark as the very obvious weak point from a defensive perspective. He switched off, and Armstrong was a little bit livelier and got the finish. So happy with the way that turned out. And I mean, you kind of thought that we'd kind of let the lead slip again, sort of within only a few minutes. But I mean, it's weird that from the Northern, Beto looked absolutely miles offside. and you're kind of looking at the linesman and just kind of wondering how the flag hasn't gone up there. And then obviously it's 4 minutes or so before we get the final decision. But I think once the decision was taking that long, I think it probably always felt that it was going to fall in our favour. It just didn't seem as if it was remotely possible that he could be onside.
I mean, we had the line obviously like right in front of us on the screen, Steve. And to be fair, Kyle Walker-Peters is a good yard or two deeper than everybody else. And I was thinking for a half a moment, I don't know, that actually makes me nervous. But yeah, it's offside.
Yeah, I think having then seen the still after the game, you do kind of get the appreciation of how close it was. I mean, I think if Walker-Peters had been leaning a little bit further backwards, then we're in all sorts of trouble there. But no, I mean, at the end of the day, I think once that was disallowed, I think we largely dealt with everything reasonably comfortably. I think. I mean, all they had at that point was, right, Michael Keane's up front. Let's lump it up to his head and play the percentages and see what happens. And fortunately, the answer was very little.
And was that first league goal in front of the Northern Wall? First league goal down your end, is that right? So
yes,
how was it?
Yeah,
how was the celebrations?
Oh yeah, it was good. Yeah, my shins got a little bit of a battering from the seat in front of me, but yeah, I mean that's to be expected. I think. I mean it was good to kind of break that duck in midweek. I thought against Stoke. I mean there was fairly obliging opponents. You would have thought in advance. Didn't quite pan out that way second half, but yeah, to break that duck and also the clean sheet, I think is huge because I mean that's our first clean sheet since that
1984.
Leicester home, first Premier League first Premier League clean sheet since the Leicester 1-0 where Iheanacho missed like a hat trick of open goals basically. So yeah, I mean that's a big deal. That's important. I mean, I know, yes, it's Everton who you can always rely on, a little bit like Spurs, in that if you're looking to end a run, those are the sort of sides you want to play at home. I think in that situation, and yeah, we've taken advantage of that, and now we've got to back that up next week.
Just on the Northern and the stadium as a whole, Ryan, sorry to cut you off, but I thought everybody actually, I thought the atmosphere was quite good yesterday in Hull. And I think in key moments where the team was struggling and where Everton were having a couple of chances, I actually felt that St Mary's really sort of bounced back and rallied behind the team. And I thought it was notable yesterday. I remember thinking it sort of during the game. So a little bit of credit to anybody who was involved, I suppose.
Apart from the guy who was sat behind me, who was even moaning about the bugle player that did the last post when I sat there, just like,
it's a little bit out of tune, wasn't he?
Oh,
it's a tough gig.
The guy behind, he was like, he's made 4 clear errors there. He shouldn't be anywhere near the pitch. I was like, sorry, we haven't even started yet. And he's talking about it. Like, mate, you know.
It does show, doesn't it, that the average football fan thinks that they can basically do any job.
Yeah.
To a professional high level standard. It's like, come on, mate.
Oh God. Anyway, Glenn, there were a few sort of contentious decisions, weren't there? I guess if you want to pick up on the Bednarek one, because I thought they cleared it up quite well on Match today, and they said, well, actually, no, it probably was just a yellow, but you weren't so sure, were you?
Well, I was at the time when it happened in real time. I mean, Bednarek was towing a caravan a little bit, and he wasn't. He was obviously second best behind Beto as he broke away down that wing, and he obviously did it on purpose. It's a clear, let's just take one for the team here. And at the time, and it went, the thing come up on the board saying it was being checked for denial of a goal scoring opportunity. And I was there thinking, well, that's a waste of time. Why are they doing this? Because Harwood-Bellis is round. But then when I saw it on the TV, and then it came up saying it's just a yellow card and a free kick and no worries. And I literally was sat there thinking, what a waste of time that was. It's clear and obvious. And then I saw it on the TV and I thought, oh, he's absolutely miles away. And I felt like we'd got away from with one there. Having seen it on the TV later. So yeah, at the time, didn't think it was a problem, but yeah, when I saw it on Match of the Day, which I watched for the first time this season, yeah, I changed my mind a little bit, and I could see why Gravelface was moaning about it, but at the end of the day, you can't have that and then not say they got away with one with the Tarkowski challenge on Archer.
Yeah, he didn't mention the one on Archer, did he? Where he came straight to the back of him.
And I just kind of think, it's a bit of a goes around, comes around thing. But on that incident in isolation, yeah, I think we got a little bit fortunate there. And I think on another day, certainly in previous seasons, Bednarek would have been sent off there.
Mm. Is Adam Lallana all right, Alfie? What was the take after the game? Because that was an injury, wasn't it, at half time?
Yeah, it was an enforced change at half time. He'd say he felt his groin, basically. And that was all the information we really got. Russell Martin said, hopefully it's not serious. But I then saw Adam sort of walking out of the ground later on with his family. So I didn't approach him and ask, with young children and whatnot. But he did look a bit uncomfortable. I think every sort of step was a bit of a wince, which isn't a great sign. And at 36 years old, he obviously is, it's going to take a little bit of time to recover from those sort of things. So I would predict, and we'll get a proper update from Russell Martin on Thursday or Friday, but I would probably predict that he'll be out for the Wolves game, just based on seeing him. But you never know, maybe it's just a bit of tightness, a bit of a bit of lactic acid or whatever. But yeah, I mean, they obviously miss him because although he didn't have his best game yesterday, I thought there was a couple of times where he dawdled in possession a little bit. He is still the person who's constantly badgering the referee and constantly talking to everyone on the pitch and making things happen, particularly playing out from the back. So they will miss him. They're fortunate it's maybe the one position in the pitch where they've got somebody who's been playing well and ready to come straight back in, Joe Rebo. But then you think about depth and next in line, Leslie Ugochukwu, who has had a few horror shows in a row, and if they need him at Wolves, it's going to be a test for him. So yeah, I reckon they'll miss him for a little bit, Lallana. But a chance for Joe to come back in.
I do wonder if Lallana actually started feeling it after about half an hour, because the first half an hour was excellent, and the times you're talking about when he dawdled on the ball all came between sort of half an hour and half time. So I do wonder if he was starting to feel it, sort of on about the half hour mark and played on, and that was the issue. But with him being as kind of fragile as he is, I can't imagine it's just going to be a 1 week absence. And maybe he'll be back for the Christmas run.
God, it's a shame, Steve, because I was kind of looking forward to seeing him playing with Tyler Dibling again and that link up that we've seen in previous weeks. So, but when they made the changes, and certainly when Dibling came on, you kind of feel like the whole stadium had a bit of a lift, didn't it? That was a better role for him, back to being that impact sub.
Yeah, and also I think the fact that obviously the changes were made that were very obvious, very obviously from a point of view of, right, we're trying to win this game. It was very obviously a positive substitution that I think fans in the ground, I think when a game's meandering a little bit, but you kind of feel that you need some sort of fresh impetus, when the manager's able to provide that with that sort of talent off the bench, all of a sudden crowd lifts, and I mean, literally first thing he does was dribble past 3 or 4 players and run straight down the middle. And yeah, it gets people excited. It lifts the crowd, and suddenly we're a bit more on the front foot. And I mean, Sugawara, as we said, obviously got the assist, and he was heavily involved. One thing, I mean, both of them were guilty of kind of giving the ball away in sort of relatively needless areas in the centre of the park, which I think, I don't know whether it was just the pressure of the situation, but certainly in the last 15-20 minutes, both sides were just winning the ball back and then presenting it straight back to the other side. It wasn't a particularly high quality 90 minutes, that's for sure.
The thing I was going to say about the subs, Glen, was I think we were talking about this last week, where we were in a position where we were kind of making the team weaker with the changes. It seems, I know Alfie kind of alluded to this, that we've got that kind of core of the squad now, and actually the changes that we saw yesterday, most of them actually made the team a little bit stronger. It didn't feel like we were just chucking on people for the sake of it.
No, and I'd agree, but on the other side of that, most people would have picked Tyler Dibling and Sugawara to start the game. So it swings and roundabouts. I mean, I thought, as I said, Ryan Manning again sort of like had his moments where he did okay. Jack Stevens did as well. Both of them were quite sloppy in possession, and as Steve said, we needed to kind of up the quality to go and try and win the game. And as soon as Tyler Dibling came on, and obviously he went right wing, Adam Armstrong switched to the left. The right side really kicked into gear. Suddenly, Dibling and Walker Peters it's because he gives defenders, he attracts defenders, and that gives Walker Peters more room basically. And so I think it was Lundstram, the guy, is that his name? Lundstram. He was over there, and Mikalenko was over there. They're both attracted to Diblin because they're worried that he's going to dribble past players, so they have to try and double up on him, and that gives Walker Peters the room to go on the outside. And if you just look at the highlights of the game and the chances that were created in the second half, suddenly there's 2 or 3 where Diblin gets the ball, plays it to Walker Peters, and he crosses it in, and it sort of made that whole side of the pitch sort of come alive. And the left hand side, obviously, with Adam Armstrong going over there, basically replacing Ryan Manning as the furthest forward left-sided player, that's obviously a bigger goal threat. For all what Ryan Manning's good at, being a goal threat is not one of them. And that seemed to suit Adam Armstrong a lot more than playing on the right. I know he played on the right the vast majority of last season and obviously did very well, but being able to sort of like make that run from out to in and hit it with his right foot, it was a really good run. By the way, I've often criticised him for being a little bit static at times, but to make that run in field. So it wasn't just the substitutions; it was putting Adam Armstrong over the other side, which made a big difference. And I thought we've all criticised. I mean, the Leicester game in particular was a fiasco with the substitutions. Every one of them just seemed wrong. But even the substitutions made in the 90th minute or whatever it was when he brought on the 2 big lads, Big Les and Big Paul, they seem to sort of like shore things up as well. We spoke last week about the way Everton are just going to go direct in the, if they need a goal in the last couple of minutes, they're just going to go direct. And having those 2 on the pitch certainly helped a little bit. And so I think it was a good day from the substitutions point of view. But whether you'd want to leave Tyler Dibbling and Sugawara out in a similar home game when you want to try and win, but if you win, it doesn't matter if you win the game with goals in the first half or in the second half. So I think
that's true.
Yesterday we can look at it and say, Russell Martin used the squad really well, and we kept it tight-ish in the first half, and then won the game in the second. Happy days.
And we're off and running. We're going to have to look back at the Stoke game in just a minute. Before we do, anything else on Everton? Anything else that stood out for you guys yesterday?
Yeah, I'll just say, for everything I said last week about Everton, how I'm not worried about them, 2 things. Number one, you then see a performance like that and you think, okay, that's why they're always down there, despite the fact that I think they've got a good team, because they can pull off a shocker like that. But also, the second I saw the team lineup for Everton, I was a little bit more confident than I had been, because, Jesper Lindstrom is a dreadful player. I'm sorry if he's listening or any family listening, but he's always busy, to be fair. He's always
big fan of the pod.
Yeah, he's always involved. And to be fair, I think it's worse if you're not involved in the game, but he just seems to have no quality. I thought that in the cup, and then I thought that yesterday as well. And then midfield, there was somebody missing from their midfield, and Mangala came in as well. I just remember thinking,
Decore.
Yeah, he's Abdoulaye Decore. Always scores against Saints. I think it's 5 he's got.
Always punches it in, yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I just remember looking at the team and thinking, okay, there's a bit more than I thought. A bit more of a chance than I thought. So.
What's happened to Dominic Calvert-Lewin?
Yeah, I don't know.
He was useless, wasn't he?
What a shadow of a player he was. Yeah, what a waste of space.
Yeah,
because Beto looked miles better when he came on, and he was only on for like 15 minutes, wasn't he?
Michael Keane looked more mobile when he went up front.